Marcus wiped the grease from his hands with a torn rag, the familiar smell of engine oil and metal shavings filling his nostrils. The garage was quiet except for the soft hum of the overhead lights and the distant sound of traffic from the highway. He had been working on Mrs. Henderson's old hover car for the past 3 hours, trying to coax life back into its failing repulsion unit. It was delicate work, the kind that required patience and an understanding of how different technologies could work together. The piece was shattered by a sound that made him drop his wrench. It was like thunder, but not quite. More like the roar of some massive creature combined with the whoosh of air being displaced by something enormous. The entire garage shook, tools rattling on their hooks and dust falling from the rafters. Marcus stepped outside, squinting in the afternoon sunlight. What he saw made him question his sanity. A dragon stood in the parking lot behind his garage. Not a small dragon from the old Earth stories his grandmother used to tell, but a creature the size of a small building. Its scales were deep emerald green with gold highlights that caught the light like metal. Its eyes were intelligent, ancient, and filled with something Marcus had seen too many times in his line of work: desperation. But it was what the dragon carried that made Marcus's heart skip a beat. Cradled in the dragon's massive claws, as gently as a mother holding a newborn, was another dragon. This one was smaller, more delicate, with scales that should have been silver-white but were now dull and gray. Her chest barely rose and fell, and even from a distance, Marcus could see the strange, sickly light that pulsed weakly beneath her scales. The large dragon's head lowered until he was looking directly at Marcus. When he spoke, his voice was like distant thunder. But somehow Marcus understood every word, despite the language being unlike anything he had ever heard. "Human mechanic," the dragon said, his voice heavy with grief and hope. "I have traveled through the void between worlds to find you. My mate, Selenia, is dying. Our healers cannot save her. Our technology has failed. But we have heard stories of human mechanics, of their ability to fix what others cannot, to make the impossible work." Marcus felt his mouth go dry. He had worked on many things in his 20-year career as a mechanic. Hovercars, mining equipment, even some of the advanced alien tech that had found its way to Earth after first contact. But a dragon? A living, breathing creature? "I'm just a mechanic," Marcus said, his voice barely a whisper. "I fix machines, not living beings." The dragon's eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger but in confusion. "But you are human, are you not? You work with your hands. You understand how things function, how they can be repaired?" "Yes, but—" "Then you are what I seek." The dragon stepped forward carefully, still cradling his mate. "I am Virenth, guardian of the crystal realms. I have seen what humans can do. In my realm, we have watched your species for centuries through the void windows. We have seen you take broken things and make them whole again. We have seen you solve problems that our greatest minds could not." Marcus looked at the dying dragon in Virenth's arms. Her breathing was so shallow it was barely visible, and the light beneath her scales was fading. Whatever was wrong with her, she didn't have much time left. "What's wrong with her?" Marcus asked, stepping closer despite his fear. Virenth's massive head turned to gaze down at his mate with infinite tenderness. "She was caught in a crystal storm 3 days ago. The crystals that power our realm, they sometimes become unstable. When they do, they release energy that can tear apart the very essence of life. The storm wounded her deeply, not just her body, but her life force itself. Our healers say the damage goes to the core of what makes her alive." Marcus nodded slowly, beginning to understand. He had seen similar problems in his work, though never in a living creature. Energy feedback, core system failures, power distribution problems. Maybe the principles weren't so different after all. "Can you show me exactly what's wrong?" Marcus asked. Virenth gently lowered his mate to the ground, positioning her so that the sun fell across her silver scales. Up close, Marcus could see the problem more clearly. There were no visible wounds, but the scales along her chest and neck were completely dull, as if the light had gone out of them. And there, just below where her heart would be, was a cluster of scales that pulsed weakly with a sickly green light. "The crystal energy is trapped inside her," Virenth explained. "It burns slowly, consuming her life force. Our healers tried to draw it out with magic, but the energy resists their efforts. It has created what our scholars call a death lock. The more we try to remove it, the deeper it burrows." Marcus knelt beside the dying dragon, studying the pattern of the affected scales. It reminded him of something he had seen before, in a plasma conduit that had suffered a feedback loop. The energy had gotten trapped in a cycle, feeding on itself and growing stronger while destroying the very thing it was trapped within. "I need to touch her," Marcus said quietly, "to feel what's happening." Virenth tensed. "Human, if the energy transfers to you, I'll be careful." Marcus placed his palm gently on Selenia's chest, just above the cluster of sickly scales. The sensation was unlike anything he had ever experienced. It was like touching a live wire, but instead of electricity, it was pure life force that had turned chaotic and destructive. He could feel the trapped energy spinning in tight circles, each rotation making it burn hotter and dig deeper into the dragon's essence. But Marcus had worked with feedback loops before. He understood the principle. Sometimes, to break a cycle, you didn't fight it head-on. Sometimes you had to redirect it, give it a new path to follow. "I think I understand," Marcus said, pulling his hand back. "The energy is trapped in a loop, because it has nowhere else to go. Your healers were trying to force it out, but that just made it resist harder." "You can help her?" Virenth's voice was barely controlled hope. Marcus looked up at the massive dragon, then back down at Selenia. Her breathing had become even more shallow while he examined her. They were running out of time. "I don't know," Marcus said honestly, "but I have an idea. I'll need to get some equipment from my shop, and I'll need you to trust me completely." Virenth nodded without hesitation. "Whatever you need." Marcus hurried back into his garage, his mind racing. He gathered everything he thought he might need: his most sensitive energy readers, a collection of conductive cables, several power cells, and his prized possession, a harmonic resonator that he had built himself from salvaged alien tech. When he returned, Selenia was barely breathing. The light in her scales had dimmed to almost nothing. "We need to work fast," Marcus said, spreading his equipment around the dying dragon. "The principle is simple. The energy is trapped because it's fighting the natural flow of her life force. Instead of trying to force it out, I'm going to give it an easier path to follow." He began attaching the conductive cables to specific points around the affected area. Using his knowledge of energy flow and his intuition about how a dragon's life force might work. The harmonic resonator went at the center of the pattern, carefully positioned to create a resonance with the trapped energy. "This is either going to work," Marcus muttered as he made the final connections, "or I'm about to kill us all." Virenth watched intently as Marcus activated the resonator. At first, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the sickly green light in Selenia's scales began to pulse in rhythm with the device. "It's working," Virenth whispered. The trapped energy was finding the new path Marcus had created for it, flowing out through the cables and into the power cells. As it left her body, Selenia's natural silver radiance began to return, spreading slowly from the center outward. But something else was happening too. As the chaotic energy flowed through Marcus's equipment, it was being filtered and purified by the harmonic resonator, transformed from destructive force into pure, clean power. The power cells began to glow with a light that was neither green nor silver, but something entirely new. When the last of the trapped energy had been drawn out, Selenia's eyes opened. They were bright and clear, filled with life and intelligence. She looked first at Virenth, then at Marcus, and finally at the glowing power cells. "You have saved my life," she said, her voice like singing crystal, "but you have done something more. You have turned that which would have destroyed me into something beautiful." Marcus looked at the power cells, still glowing with the transformed energy. "I just redirected it. Gave it somewhere else to go." "No," Virenth said, his voice filled with awe. "You have done what our greatest scholars said was impossible. You have turned chaos into order, destruction into creation. This is why they call you humans the miracle workers." As if to prove his point, one of the power cells pulsed brightly, and Marcus's equipment began to hum with energy unlike anything he had ever worked with. This wasn't just power. It was life force itself, refined and controlled. "What is it?" Marcus asked. Selenia struggled to her feet, her scales now blazing with renewed silver light. "You have created something new, human mechanic. This energy, it is not just power. It is the essence of life itself, but stable, controllable. In our realm, such a thing could change everything." Marcus stared at the glowing cells, beginning to understand that what had just happened was bigger than saving one dragon's life. He had stumbled onto something that could revolutionize how energy was created and used, something that combined the best of both human engineering and dragon magic. "This is just the beginning," Virenth said, reading Marcus's thoughts. "There are others in my realm who could benefit from your skills. Problems that our magic cannot solve, but perhaps your human approach to fixing things could." Marcus nodded slowly, still processing what had happened. He had come out to fix Mrs. Henderson's hover car, and now he was apparently some kind of interdimensional healer. "But first," Selenia said, her voice gaining strength with each word, "we must understand exactly what you have created here. This energy, if it could be replicated, if it could be mass-produced." She left the sentence unfinished, but Marcus could see the possibilities stretching out before them. This was bigger than just one dragon's life. This could change the relationship between humans and the other species of the galaxy. As the sun began to set behind them, casting long shadows across the parking lot, Marcus realized his life as a simple mechanic was over. Something new was beginning, something that would require all of his skills and more. But as he looked at Selenia, standing proud and healthy beside her grateful mate, he knew he was ready for whatever came next. 3 days had passed since Virenth and Selenia arrived in Marcus's parking lot, and those 3 days had changed everything. The small garage that once specialized in hovercar repairs had become something unprecedented, a laboratory where human engineering met otherworldly magic. Marcus stood before a workbench covered in crystal formations that Selenia had grown from the stabilized life force energy. Each crystal hummed with power, but not the chaotic, destructive force that had nearly killed her. This was something entirely different, organized, responsive, and somehow alive in ways that defied his understanding of physics. "The crystals are learning," Selenia explained, her silver scales catching the morning light streaming through the garage windows. She had regained all her strength and more, but had chosen to remain in her smaller, more compact form to better work alongside Marcus. "Each time you channel energy through your harmonic resonator, they adapt, becoming more efficient." Marcus picked up one of the crystals, marveling at its weight and the way it seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat. "In human science, we call this adaptive technology, but I've never seen anything that adapts this fast." Virenth, who had maintained his full size but positioned himself carefully to avoid damaging the garage's structure, rumbled thoughtfully. "In our realm, Adaptation takes centuries. Your human approach accelerates everything. The implications were staggering. Marcus had initially thought he was just redirecting trapped energy, but the three of them had discovered something far more significant. The combination of human technological thinking and dragon life force manipulation had created a new form of energy that was both stable and infinitely adaptable. "Show me the transportation problem again," Marcus said, setting down the crystal and turning to face Virenth. The great dragon's expression grew somber. "As I explained, travel between our realm and yours requires enormous amounts of energy. The portal I used to bring Selenia here consumed the equivalent of a year's worth of crystal production. It was a one-way journey. We lack the power to return home." Marcus had been thinking about this problem for days. Portal technology was far beyond anything humans had developed, but the energy requirements were something he could understand. It was like trying to run a city on a single battery. Theoretically possible, but completely impractical. "What if we don't need to match your original energy output?" Marcus asked. "What if we could make the process more efficient instead?" Selenia tilted her head, a gesture that reminded Marcus oddly of a curious cat. "How do you mean?" Marcus walked over to his workbench and pulled out a simple mechanical lever. "Human engineering is all about efficiency. We learned early that you don't always need more power. Sometimes you just need to use it better." He demonstrated the lever, showing how a small force could move a much larger weight. "Your portal magic probably works by overwhelming the barriers between dimensions with raw power. But what if we could find the weak points instead?" Virenth's eyes widened with understanding. "You would make the barrier yield rather than break it down?" "Exactly." Marcus set down the lever and picked up one of the adaptive crystals. "These crystals you're growing, they're not just storing energy, they're learning how energy wants to flow. What if we taught them to find the path of least resistance between dimensions?" Over the next several hours, Marcus worked with the dragons to design something that had never existed before, a portal system based on efficiency rather than brute force. Using his harmonic resonator as a foundation, they began building an array of adaptive crystals that could map the dimensional barriers and find the optimal points for breakthrough. The process was unlike anything Marcus had ever attempted. It required him to think not just about mechanical engineering, but about the very nature of space and reality itself. Yet somehow, his intuitive understanding of how things worked, the same instinct that let him repair complex alien tech by feel, guided him through concepts that should have taken years to master. "There," Marcus said, making a final adjustment to the crystal array. "Try channeling a small amount of portal energy through this." Selenia placed her claws on the central crystal and began to channel power into the system. Immediately, the array came alive with light, but instead of the violent, uncontrolled energy that had characterized their original portal, this was smooth and rhythmic. A small rift appeared in the air above the array, barely large enough for a person to put their hand through, but stable and controlled. Through it, Marcus could see a landscape of impossible beauty, floating islands connected by bridges of crystallized light, with dragons soaring through skies that shifted color like aurora. "By the ancient flames," Virenth whispered, "you've opened a viewing portal with less energy than it takes us to light our homes." But as they watched, something unexpected happened. The portal began to expand on its own, growing larger and more stable with each passing moment. "It's learning," Marcus realized. "The array is figuring out how to make the connection more efficient." Within minutes, the portal had grown large enough for a dragon to pass through. And that's when they heard the sound. Multiple voices calling out in the language Virenth and Selenia spoke. "Those are our people," Selenia gasped. "They're trying to reach us." Through the portal came 3 dragons, smaller than Virenth but still impressive in size. Their scales were various shades of blue and purple, and they moved with urgency. The lead dragon, whose scales were deep sapphire, spoke rapidly to Viranth in their native tongue. "What are they saying?" Marcus asked. Viranth's expression grew grave. "There's been a disaster in our realm. The crystal storms that wounded Selenia have spread. They're threatening our primary cities. Our healers are overwhelmed, and our energy sources are failing." "How many are affected?" Selenia asked, switching to the human language so Marcus could understand. "Hundreds," the sapphire dragon replied. "The storms drain life force faster than our healers can restore it. We've lost 12 dragons already, and many more are weakening." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. One dying dragon had been challenging enough, but hundreds. It would require resources and energy on a scale he had never imagined. "We cannot ask this of you, human," Viranth said quietly. "You have already given us more than we could have hoped for." But Marcus was already thinking, his mind racing through possibilities. "Tell me about your healing centers. How do they work?" The sapphire dragon, who introduced herself as Azura, described their healing chambers, large crystalline structures that focused ambient life force energy to restore the wounded. But the chambers were designed for minor injuries and normal energy levels, not the massive drain caused by crystal storm damage. "It's a distribution problem," Marcus realized. "You have healers and you have energy, but you can't get enough of either to the people who need it most." He began pacing, the same way he did when working through a particularly complex repair. What if we built a network, used the adaptive crystals to create a healing grid that could channel energy more efficiently? "A grid?" Azura asked. Marcus gestured to the power lines visible through the garage window. "Humans learned centuries ago that you can deliver power more efficiently through a network than point to point. Instead of having individual healing chambers, what if we connected them all through adaptive crystals that could balance the load?" The concept was ambitious beyond anything any of them had considered. It would require dozens of adaptive crystals, careful calibration of the harmonic resonators, and a deep understanding of how dragon life force flowed through their realm. "It might work," Selenia said slowly. "But the scale... It would take months to build something like that." "Not if we're smart about it," Marcus countered. "We don't need to build the whole network at once. We start with the most critical cases, prove the concept works, then expand from there." Over the next hour, they designed the basic framework for what Marcus was already thinking of as the life force distribution network. It would use the adaptive crystals as nodes, connected by carefully tuned harmonic fields that could channel healing energy across vast distances. But as they worked, Marcus realized they faced a fundamental problem. The network would require precise calibration at each node, and that calibration required someone who understood both human engineering principles and dragon life force mechanics. "I need to come with you," Marcus said finally. The dragons looked at him in shock. "Human," Viranth said carefully. "Our realm is not like yours. The very air is infused with energies that could be dangerous to your kind." "Maybe," Marcus admitted. "But this network won't work without someone who understands the engineering principles. I can teach your people how to build and maintain it, but I need to be there to oversee the initial installation." Azura shook her head. "The risk is too great. If something happens to you in our realm, then you'll figure out how to fix me," Marcus said with a slight smile. "That's what good mechanics do. We solve problems as they come up." Selenia stepped forward. "There is another consideration. Marcus, if you come to our realm, you will be exposed to the pure life force energies that flow there. For a human, that could be transformative." "Transformative how?" "We don't know," Viranth admitted. "No human has ever spent extended time in our realm. The energies there might enhance your abilities, or they might change you in ways we cannot predict." Marcus looked at the portal, still hanging stable and bright in the air, showing glimpses of a world unlike anything on Earth. Through it, He could see dragons in the distance, some clearly struggling with injuries from the crystal storms. "Sometimes," Marcus said, "you have to take calculated risks to get the job done." He began gathering his essential tools, the harmonic resonator, his best diagnostic equipment, and a selection of adaptive crystals. Besides, if your realm is really in as much trouble as Azura says, then waiting isn't an option. As he packed, Marcus realized that once again, his life was about to change completely. 3 days ago, he had been a simple mechanic. Now he was about to become the first human to travel to another dimension, carrying technology that could save hundreds of lives. "Are you certain about this?" Selenia asked quietly. Marcus shouldered his tool bag and looked around his garage one last time. Mrs. Henderson's hover car still sat half-repaired in the corner, a reminder of his old life. But that life seemed impossibly small now compared to what lay ahead. "In my line of work," Marcus said, stepping toward the portal, "you learn that the biggest problems usually have the most elegant solutions. We just need to find them." With that, he stepped through the portal into a realm of dragons, carrying nothing but his tools, his knowledge, and a determination to fix whatever was broken. Marcus had expected the dragon realm to feel alien, but nothing had prepared him for the reality of breathing air that hummed with life itself. Every inhalation filled him with energy that seemed to sing through his veins, and every surface he touched resonated with harmonics that his human senses had never been designed to perceive. 2 weeks had passed since he arrived through Selenia's portal, and in that time, the life force distribution network had grown from an ambitious theory to a functioning reality. Across the dragon realm, 13 healing nodes now operated in perfect synchronization, channeling purified energy to dragons affected by the continuing crystal storms. But the network was just the beginning of what had become the most extraordinary period of Marcus's life. "The resonance is increasing again," called Thorak, a bronze dragon who had become Marcus's primary assistant. The young dragon had an intuitive understanding of harmonic frequencies that complemented Marcus's engineering knowledge perfectly. Marcus looked up from the central command crystal he had been fine-tuning. The massive structure, grown from the same adaptive crystal technology he had developed in his garage, now served as the brain of the entire healing network, but it had evolved far beyond his original design. "Show me the readings," Marcus said, wiping sweat from his brow. The constant exposure to life force energy had changed him in ways that were becoming impossible to ignore. His reflexes were faster, his thinking clearer, and he could sense the flow of energy through the crystals without any instruments at all. Thorak gestured with one wing toward the crystalline displays that showed the network's status. "The efficiency has increased by another 12% since yesterday. The adaptive crystals are learning faster than our models predicted." It was true. The healing network had become something far more sophisticated than Marcus had originally envisioned. Instead of simply distributing energy, the crystals had learned to analyze each patient's specific needs and customize the healing frequencies accordingly. What had started as a mechanical solution to an energy distribution problem had evolved into something approaching artificial intelligence. "There's something else," Thorak continued, his young voice tinged with excitement. "The elders want to see you. They say the deep oracle has awakened." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the crystal chamber's temperature. He had heard whispers about the deep oracle, an ancient dragon of immense power who had been sleeping for centuries. According to legend, the oracle only awakened during times of great change or when the realm faced its most critical moments. Did they say what the oracle wants? To meet the human who has brought new magic to our realm. Marcus followed Thorak through the crystal corridors of the central healing facility, past chambers where dozens of dragons recovered from crystal storm injuries. The sight still amazed him. creatures the size of buildings resting peacefully while streams of pure healing energy flowed around them like gentle rivers of light. But what amazed him more was how the dragons had embraced his human approach to problem-solving. Where their traditional methods relied on raw power and ancient knowledge, Marcus had shown them the value of efficiency, adaptation, and systematic thinking. The combination of human engineering and dragon magic had proven far more powerful than either could have achieved alone. They emerged onto a vast platform carved into the side of a floating mountain. The view took Marcus's breath away, as it did every time he saw it. The dragon realm stretched out below them, a landscape of impossible beauty where crystal forests grew alongside living cities that pulsed with their own internal light. At the center of the platform waited the Council of Elders, 7 ancient dragons whose scales had taken on the deep, rich colors of gemstones. But all of them paled in comparison to the massive presence that dominated the space. The Deep Oracle was unlike any dragon Marcus had seen. Her scales were not a single color, but seemed to contain the entire spectrum of light within them, shifting and changing like an aurora made solid. She was easily 3 times the size of Virenth, and when she turned her ancient eyes toward Marcus, he felt as though she was seeing not just him, but every possibility and potential that surrounded him. "So," the Oracle said, her voice like the sound of stars being born, "you are the human who has changed the very nature of our magic." Marcus swallowed hard, trying to find his voice. "I just applied engineering principles to energy distribution problems. Nothing more." The Oracle's massive head tilted slightly, and something that might have been amusement flickered in her ancient eyes. "Nothing more? Human child, do you understand what you have accomplished?" Before Marcus could answer, the Oracle gestured with one wing toward the healing network's central crystal. The massive structure began to glow, and suddenly, Marcus could see the entire network as the Oracle saw it. Streams of energy flowing across continents, connecting hundreds of healing nodes in a web of light that pulsed like a living heartbeat. "You have taught our magic to think," the Oracle continued. "For millennia, we have channeled life force through will and ancient knowledge. But you have shown our energies how to reason, how to adapt, how to learn. This is not merely engineering, human. This is evolution." Marcus stared at the network visualization, finally understanding the full scope of what had happened. The adaptive crystals weren't just distributing energy. They were developing their own form of consciousness, learning and growing with each passing day. "But that's not the most remarkable thing you have achieved," the Oracle said, her starlight gaze focusing on Marcus with increased intensity. "Tell me, human, how do you feel?" It was then that Marcus realized the truth he had been avoiding. The constant exposure to life force energy hadn't just enhanced his abilities, it had fundamentally changed him. He could feel the network's pulse as if it were his own heartbeat. He could sense the health and well-being of every dragon connected to the system. The boundary between his human consciousness and the magical energies of the realm had blurred until they were almost indistinguishable. "I feel connected," Marcus admitted, "like I'm part of something larger than myself." "Indeed you are," the Oracle said. "You have become the first human to successfully merge with dragon magic. But more than that, you have created a bridge between our species that has never existed before." One of the elder dragons, her scales the deep blue of sapphires, stepped forward. "The crystal storms that threatened our realm have not merely been healed," she said. "They have been transformed. The chaotic energies that once brought destruction now fuel the network that brings healing. You have taught us that problems can become solutions." Marcus looked around at the assembled dragons, finally understanding why they had all gathered here. This wasn't just about the healing network or even the crisis with the crystal storms. This was about something much larger. You're talking about a permanent alliance, Marcus realized, between humans and dragons. The Oracle nodded slowly. The network you have built proves that our species can work together to create things neither could achieve alone. But the implications go far beyond healing magic. She gestured again, and the crystal displays showed new images, human cities with dragon-grown crystal arrays providing clean, unlimited energy, human spacecraft powered by life force engines that could travel between dimensions, dragons working alongside human engineers to solve problems across multiple realms. The universe is vast, human child. And it is filled with challenges that require both the human gift for innovation and the dragon mastery of fundamental forces. Together, our species could explore realms of possibility that neither could reach alone. Marcus felt the weight of the Oracle's words, understanding that he stood at a crossroads that would determine the future of both species. The mechanic who had once fixed hover cars in a small garage was being offered the chance to help forge an alliance that could reshape reality itself. "What would this mean for me?" Marcus asked quietly. "You have already begun the transformation," Selenia said, stepping forward from where she had been waiting at the edge of the platform. "Your human essence has merged with our realm's energies in a way that makes you unique in all creation. You are no longer fully human, but neither are you dragon. You are something new." Marcus looked down at his hands, noticing for the first time that they seemed to carry their own inner light, a soft glow that pulsed in rhythm with the healing network. The change that had been gradual over weeks suddenly seemed obvious and undeniable. "You would become the first human-dragon harmonic," the Oracle explained. "A bridge between our species capable of working with both human technology and dragon magic at levels neither race could achieve independently. But the choice must be yours, freely made." Marcus thought of his old life. The quiet garage, the familiar routine of fixing machines, the simple satisfaction of solving mechanical problems. That life seemed impossibly small now, but it had been real, and it had been his. Then he thought of the healing network humming with life around him, of the dragons who had learned to see problems as opportunities, of the vast possibilities that stretched out before both species if they could truly learn to work together. "If I accept," Marcus said, "I can never go back to being just human." "No," the Oracle agreed. "But you would gain the ability to help both species reach heights neither could achieve alone. The choice is transformation or return, but know that either path will be honored." Marcus closed his eyes, feeling the pulse of the network through every fiber of his being. In that moment, he could sense every dragon connected to the system, could feel their strength returning as the adaptive crystals continued their work of healing and restoration. When he opened his eyes, his decision was clear. "I accept," Marcus said, "but I have one condition." The Oracle raised her massive head slightly. "Speak. This can't be just about me. If humans and dragons are going to work together, it has to be a real partnership. Other humans need to have the opportunity to learn about dragon magic, and dragons need to understand human science and engineering." "You propose an exchange of knowledge," one of the elders said thoughtfully. "More than that," Marcus replied. "I propose we build a school, a place where both species can learn from each other, where the next generation can grow up understanding both approaches to solving problems." The Oracle was quiet for a long moment, and Marcus could feel her ancient mind considering all the implications of his proposal. Finally, she nodded. "It shall be as you say, Marcus of the Two Realms. The transformation is complete, and the alliance begins now." As the Oracle spoke, Marcus felt the final change taking place within him. The last barriers between his human consciousness and the dragon realm's energies dissolved, leaving him something entirely new. A being who could think like a human but channel life force like a dragon, who understood both the precision of engineering and the flow of magic. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the central courtyard of what had become known as the Academy of Harmonic Sciences. Around him, young dragons learned the principles of mechanical engineering, while human students practiced basic energy manipulation under the careful guidance of dragon instructors. The healing network had expanded beyond the dragon realm, with nodes now operating in 3 different dimensions. The crystal storms that had once threatened entire civilizations had been transformed into sources of clean, limitless energy. And most importantly, the friendship between humans and dragons had grown into something neither species had imagined possible. Marcus smiled as he watched a young human girl successfully levitate a crystal using dragon breathing techniques, while nearby, a bronze dragonling used human-designed tools to build his first harmonic resonator. The universe was vast and full of challenges, but for the first time in history, 2 of its most innovative species were working together to meet them. And at the center of it all was the simple truth that Marcus had learned in his garage all those months ago. With the right approach, any problem could be solved. Sometimes the most amazing solutions came from the most unexpected places.